Hi, my name is Mauro, and I'm today to speak to you about something that I found very interesting called serverless. So, what serverless means? One definition is that it's an application that depends significantly on a third-party service. An example of that definition will be Firebase. Another example will be Auth0, which is a tool that is actually the maintainer of JWT token that we use a lot. And this type of applications appear a lot when people start having mobile applications, and the need to scale up pretty quickly appear. And they are commonly known backend as service. But recently, that definition falls short. There is a new definition that is an application where server-side logic run in a stateless compute container is event-triggered, ephemeral, and fully managed by a third party. So the important part here is stateless. You cannot have a state. It will run in a container. Something will trigger this to run, and it will run for a very short period of time. And this is now commonly known as function as service. So for example, Heroku, that we have been using a lot, is kind of serverless or not? Well, based on the other definition, I would say it might be, but extending the definition, no. But it can be discussed. So when you deploy to Heroku, you deploy your functions. You don't think much about what are you deploying, what is behind what the server is really doing. You have access to the logs and so on, but really, they are taking care of that for you. So the big difference with what we are calling serverless is that a serverless application is considered when it takes milliseconds to start the server and run less than a minute or a few seconds, and then the server dies. So the server is not there waiting for other requests. Just do one thing and then it's gone. So is this real true? Is this without a server? Well, I already said that it's running on containers, so for sure they run on servers. But you don't care about that. You basically worry about building the function, the code, then you deploy the code, and that's it. After that, the scaling or when it's running or not running is something that does not concern you anymore. That is a big difference, and it's very useful for do applications that has a lot of peaks or are highly scalable all of a sudden. Well, that's very interesting. So let's review this basic architecture. This is a traditional client-server architecture. And I'm not going to speak much about it because it's actually, we have seen this like 100 times. But let me show you how this will look like on the serverless world. Well, it looks more complicated, definitely. You will have, everything should be an API, really. You can only do API calls. And your code will be the functions, function 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you build those functions properly, those functions are going to be single concern functions. It will do just one thing, and that's it. And how you call these functions in this sample, the API gateway will trigger the event of calling the function. And notice there are other APIs going on here. One of them is the database that is also considered an API. You have something called API Auth0. This is just a sample. That can be an authentication API that is totally separated from your application. And you can even do things like having the client connecting directly to the database, which is a little bit like what Firebase is doing. And in the traditional model, that will not be a good idea. So where are the benefits? Well, operational cost because you're just concerned about code, and you don't need to be concerned about, managing servers and all that type of things. The scalability, I will say that is even more important, because you can have, once you have this properly built, you can have one server running, one function running for a second, or you can have 1 million functions running in 1 second. And the vendors that are providing this, they promise you that you are never going to run out of compute. We will see if that's true in the long term. But in the short term, me as a developer, I found it very appealing. And finally, it's greener. And I have to mention it because you don't have anything running when you don't need it. And that allows you to share the same computing capacity with many people. And when you need it, you can have 100 processes running at the same time. But it will be maybe 10 seconds, and then you're done, and somebody else can use it. Issues. Well, this is a very new technology, has a lot of issues. You are sharing your code in same places than other people. I'm pretty sure some people will not be very happy of that. And I haven't heard of any breach, but I'm pretty sure we will hear at some point. Somebody will find a way. You have no control because you just put the code there, and if things goes down, there's nothing that you can do. You just need to wait to be back. It's a little bit of vendor lock-in, because once you are with that vendor and you start making more complex applications, you will start using more APIs related to that vendor. And then at that point will be maybe very hard. Somebody actually said that serverless might be like store procedures were for databases. And I know the feeling, because once you were using a store procedure in a particular database, it was very hard to migrate to another. And this might be the case, but again, it's very new. We don't know really where it's going to go. And it's hard to implement. You need to know a little bit how to configure the API. And it's hard to monitor. You have to use third parties to monitor. And you cannot get into the machine because you have no access to it. OK, so I have a couple of examples to show you. But I'm going to speak mainly about the second one, which is the Serverless Framework. The Serverless Framework is an open source group that is focusing on making the life of people trying to do serverless applications easier. And you can do npm install serverless globally. And after that, you can create, let's say, an AWS Node.js template. But you can do that also with other vendors, like Microsoft, or they have OpenWhisk, IBM. And then you just run serverless deploy. And finally, you do serverless invoke and the name of the function. So if I have time, I'll make you a quick demo on how that works. See? OK, can you see that? OK. So I'm just creating, and then I run the command serverless create, and then I say the template. So that happened quickly because I already have my credentials in. If not, you have to put your credentials for AWS in this case. Let me show you how the code looks like. This is a boilerplate, so it will not be a complex application. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe easier. So basically, you say here it has a message. This is a node function just returning a JSON value. I'm just going to put a sample. OK, me save that. And then, as the instruction said, you have to call this with a name. I'm just going to call it demo3. Actually FSA demo3. And then here you have a lot of things that you can enable to connect with S3 and other parts of AWS, but we are not going to do that. So then I come here and I just do serverless deploy. And if everything goes well, it will start deploying. That's basically doing a zip of the necessary files. If you have no packages, it will zip them as well. And then let me show you here. This is my console for AWS that I already opened before the presentation. And let's take a look. This will take a couple of seconds. And once deployed, we are going to be able to see it there. I have to say the serverless will not fix all the needs and all the problems, but it's very interesting, especially if you are having a bottleneck on an application, it can be a quick solution for it. And I have seen entire applications built on serverless that are handling millions of users, but I haven't seen many of them. Still, there is a lot of hype with it. I have to say, if a container, a classical container, run for seconds, maybe it can be called serverless. So it's just a definition name, but it's a container. We shouldn't get confused about it. Okay, so this should be close to finish. Let me refresh here. So we see that the function now is in my AWS Lambda functions. And okay, I got confirmation. And then I can do serverless invoke minus function, and the function is called hello. That is actually going to AWS, running the function and getting me back the result. And if I have one more second, I can probably go here to the API gateway, and I create an API gateway in advance for today. And I have to go to the GET protocol by default. And here, I have to change it for the name of the application, which was FSA demo. So let me edit this. Demo3. Then you have to publish the API again, just because it has some cache on it. And then I can grab this, open Chrome, put it there, and I got an internal server then. Let me try again. Hello FSA, here it is, just took a second. And that's it, pretty much. I just create a small message, serverless, and I call it from the browser through the API gateway of AWS, went to the function, ran the functions, and got back the answer. And that's it, thank you.